What happens when one of America's most beloved comedians decides he's done playing by Hollywood's rules? What unfolds is a years-long battle that has exposed the entertainment industry's ugliest secrets, shattered the power of cancel culture, and proven that authenticity will always triumph over ideology. Tim Allen didn't just challenge woke Hollywood, he declared war on it. And in a twist that has left the progressive establishment reeling, he's winning. This isn't a story about a single viral moment or one controversial tweet. This is the story of a decades-long rebellion against an industry that demands conformity, punishes independent thought, and tries to destroy anyone who dares to think differently. This is about a comedian who grew up idolizing boundary pushers like Richard Pryor and Lenny Bruce, who refuses to let the thought police dictate what he can and cannot say. Tim Allen has been canceled, blacklisted, attacked, and vilified. His top-rated show was pulled off the air for political reasons. His social media posts trigger meltdowns across the internet. His Christmas jokes spark outrage from people who somehow find Santa Claus offensive. And through it all, Tim has done something that terrifies Hollywood more than anything else. He's kept going. What you're about to read isn't just another celebrity controversy. This is the blueprint for how to beat cancel culture at its own game. This is the story of how one man's refusal to surrender became a masterclass in courage that has inspired millions. The golden age of Tim Allen began in the 1,990 seconds, a time when comedy was genuinely funny and political correctness hadn't yet strangled creative expression. Home Improvement dominated television ratings, making Tim one of the biggest stars in America. Families gathered around their televisions every Tuesday night to watch Tim the Toolman Taylor navigate suburban life with his characteristic blend of masculinity, humor, and heart. Then came The Santa Claus, a Christmas film that became an instant classic and spawned a franchise that defined the holiday season for an entire generation. Tim Allen wasn't just a comedian or an actor, he was a cultural icon. Someone who represented traditional American values wrapped in accessible, family-friendly entertainment. But even in those early days, Tim was different from other Hollywood stars. He didn't move to Los Angeles and adopt the progressive politics that dominated the entertainment industry. He didn't pretend to be someone he wasn't just to fit in with the crowd. He remained authentically himself, a middle American comedian who believed in personal responsibility, limited government, and the freedom to say whatever he thought was funny. For years, this didn't matter much. Hollywood was willing to tolerate political diversity as long as the money kept rolling in, and Tim Allen made them a lot of money. But beneath the surface, tensions were building. The entertainment industry was becoming increasingly ideological, increasingly intolerant of dissenting voices, increasingly determined to use its platform to push specific political narratives. Tim Allen was about to become their enemy, and he didn't even see it coming. The first major shot fired in Hollywood's war against Tim Allen came with Last Man Standing. The show premiered on ABC in 2011 and quickly became one of the network's highest-rated programs. Week after week, millions of Americans tuned in to watch Tim play Mike Baxter, a likable conservative navigating a world that seemed determined to challenge everything he believed in. The show was funny. It was well written. It connected with audiences in ways that most network comedies could only dream of achieving. By every objective measure of television success, Last Man Standing was a massive hit. But it had one unforgivable problem. It portrayed conservatives as normal, likable human beings rather than the cartoonish villains Hollywood preferred. Mike Baxter was smart, principled, and genuinely funny. He loved his family, worked hard, and stood up for traditional values without being preachy or mean-spirited. Audiences loved him. Critics grudgingly admitted the show worked, and that made him dangerous. In 2017, ABC made a decision that shocked the entertainment industry and confirmed what many Americans had long suspected. They canceled Last Man Standing despite its strong ratings. The network claimed it was a business decision, but nobody believed that. You don't cancel one of your top-performing shows for business reasons. You cancel it because you don't like what it represents. Tim and the entire cast and crew were blindsided. They had just finished what they thought was another successful season. They were at the top of their game, delivering quality entertainment to millions of loyal viewers. And suddenly, without warning, they were gone. We're all going, "This is the best show we've ever been on." What? We're off the air? Tim recalled later, his voice still carrying the disbelief of that moment. We all thought we were at the top of their game at ABC. Who knows how networks work? I don't know. But it was dropped. The cancellation sent shockwaves through Hollywood. The message was clear. Political conformity mattered more than ratings, more than quality, more than the jobs of hundreds of crew members. If you dared to present conservative viewpoints in a sympathetic light, you would be punished regardless of your success. But ABC made one critical miscalculation. They assumed that canceling Tim Allen would silence him, that taking away his platform would force him to either change his politics or fade into obscurity. They were catastrophically wrong. Within months, Fox picked up Last Man Standing, giving Tim a new home and proving that there was an enormous appetite for the kind of entertainment Hollywood claimed nobody wanted. The show's resurrection became a symbol of resistance against cancel culture, proof that authentic voices could survive even when the establishment tried to destroy them. The show returned to massive ratings. Fans who had been devastated by the cancellation celebrated its return, and Tim Allen had learned a valuable lesson. Hollywood's power over him was an illusion. As long as audiences wanted to hear his voice, he would have a platform. But the war was just beginning. The digital age has given everyone a voice, and Tim Allen has never been shy about using his. His Twitter account became a battlefield where he would regularly post observations that sent the woke mob into absolute meltdowns. One tweet in particular captured the essence of Tim's rebellion against the progressive thought police. He wanted to know what the face of woke looked like, and his answer was devastating in its accuracy. Trolls hiding behind computer screens and keyboards. People whose faces we never see but who complain endlessly about everything. The reaction was instantaneous and nuclear. Twitter erupted with rage. Activists demanded Tim be canceled again. Think pieces were written about how his tweet was problematic, offensive, and harmful. The usual suspects lined up to denounce him, to demand apologies, to insist that he be punished for daring to mock the very people who had appointed themselves as society's moral arbiters. And Tim Allen's response? He didn't care. Not even a little bit. It's actually disturbing on a fundamental level, Tim said in an interview, discussing the cancel culture mob's constant attacks. It's gotten to the point where literally there's part of me, a deep part of me that just says, F it, bring it on. If you want to cancel me, go ahead. That defiance, that absolute refusal to live in fear, is what makes Tim Allen uncancelable. He's not playing their game. He's not seeking their approval. He's not moderating his voice or self-censoring to avoid controversy. He's simply being himself. And if that offends people, that's their problem, not his. But the attacks kept coming from every direction imaginable. The Disneyland incident became another flashpoint in Tim's ongoing war with woke culture. During a visit to the park, Tim overheard a conversation that perfectly encapsulated the insanity of modern progressive ideology. A 13-year-old kid questioning whether he might be pansexual because he liked pancakes. Any reasonable person hearing this would recognize it as the absurdity it is. A confused teenager parroting concepts he doesn't understand, probably influenced by adults who should know better. But this is exactly the kind of thing that happens when society decides that children should be encouraged to question fundamental aspects of their identity based on arbitrary preferences and feelings. Tim, being Tim, called it out. He shared the story, expressing bewilderment at how society had reached the point where liking pancakes somehow relates to sexual identity. It was funny, it was observational, it was the kind of comedy that used to be completely normal. The backlash was immediate and vicious. Tim was accused of being insensitive, of mocking LGBTQ+ people, of being a bigot. The woke mob descended with their usual fury, demanding apologies and cancellations. Progressive websites wrote articles about how problematic his comments were. Twitter activists organized campaigns to pressure Disney to cut ties with him. But here's what the outrage mob failed to understand. Tim Allen was making a legitimate point wrapped in humor. Why are adults encouraging 13-year-olds to question their sexual orientation based on food preferences? Why has society decided that children are capable of making life-altering decisions about gender and sexuality when we don't even trust them to vote, drive, or drink alcohol? These are reasonable questions, important questions, questions that desperately need to be asked in a culture that seems increasingly determined to confuse and manipulate children for ideological purposes. The fact that there are fully sentient adults who are encouraging this behavior in kids is so absurd, observers noted in the aftermath. They need to be investigated because why on earth are you so hell-bent on changing kids' identities? Tell them they are a boy if they're born a boy. Tell them they are a girl if they're born a girl. That's all you have to do to prevent this insanity. The youth are targeted because they represent the future. Brainwash them young enough, and the insanity never ends. Tim Allen was simply refusing to participate in that brainwashing, and that made him a threat. But Disney, despite the pressure, couldn't fully cancel Tim Allen. Why? Because he's too valuable. His connection to Santa Claus through the Santa Claus franchise has made him synonymous with Christmas for nearly 30 years. Parents who grew up watching those films now share them with their own children. The nostalgia, the brand recognition, the sheer cultural impact, it's irreplaceable. So Disney found themselves in an uncomfortable position. They needed Tim Allen even as they despised what he represented. The solution? Bring him back for the Santa Clauses on Disney+, but keep him on a tight leash, monitor his content, and hope he doesn't say anything too controversial. That strategy lasted exactly as long as it took Tim to deliver his first joke. The Santa Clauses launched on Disney+ with significant fanfare. Tim Allen returning as Santa Claus, a new generation discovering the magic, heartwarming holiday content for the whole family. Everything seemed perfect until a small joke in one of the episodes detonated like a bomb across social media. The joke was simple. Tim's character made a casual reference to saying Merry Christmas, only to realize that somehow, in the modern world, this had become problematic. It was gentle satire, the kind of observational humor that holiday content has included for decades. The joke wasn't mean-spirited or aggressive, it simply acknowledged a reality that millions of Americans experience every year, when they're told that saying Merry Christmas might offend someone. But in woke Hollywood, even acknowledging that reality is forbidden, the outrage was spectacular. Podcaster and filmmaker Scott Weinberg kicked off the controversy by sharing the line on Twitter, expressing his shock and dismay that Disney would allow such right-wing politics in a Christmas show. The tweet went viral immediately. Within hours, thousands of angry progressives were piling on, accusing Tim of bringing divisive politics into family entertainment, of being insensitive, of ruining Christmas itself. Think about that for a moment. A joke about saying Merry Christmas in a Christmas show somehow became controversial. Santa Claus, the most culturally neutral, universally beloved figure in modern Western culture, had been weaponized in the culture war because Tim Allen dared to acknowledge that political correctness has made people afraid to use traditional Christmas greetings. The absurdity was staggering. This wasn't a political show. This wasn't a partisan platform. This was literally a program about Santa Claus delivering presents and spreading Christmas cheer. If you can't say Merry Christmas in a show about Christmas, when can you say it? But the woke mob doesn't care about logic or consistency. They care about control. They care about enforcing their ideology in every space, including family entertainment. And Tim Allen had just committed the unforgivable sin of pushing back, however gently. Critics tore into him. Social media exploded with demands that Disney fire him. Progressive websites wrote think pieces about how the joke revealed Tim's right-wing extremism. The usual cancel culture machinery ground into action, trying once again to destroy a man whose only crime was refusing to pretend that reality doesn't exist. And once again, Tim Allen didn't apologize. He didn't walk anything back. He didn't issue a groveling statement about how he's learned and grown and promises to do better. He simply moved forward, secure in the knowledge that the millions of people watching his show understood exactly what he was saying and agreed with it. The truth is that Tim's career has been defined by these kinds of moments, small acts of rebellion that expose the absurdity of woke ideology while making people laugh. He's not trying to be a political activist. He's not positioning himself as a conservative culture warrior. He's simply being a comedian who refuses to let the thought police dictate what he can and cannot joke about. But each of these battles has taken a toll, and the pressure has been relentless. The View appearance where Tim discussed his comedy revealed the daily tightrope that comedians now walk in an era of militant political correctness. Sitting across from Joy Behar herself, a former comedian who somehow forgot how to be funny, Tim explained the fundamental challenge facing modern comedy. "You know, you use some provocative words, but I tell them it's words I really got from my parents," Tim said, his voice carrying both humor and frustration. "They said this stuff we talked about. I can't even say it here. I can't even point to it. It is an alarming thing for comedians. That's the reality of modern entertainment. Words and concepts that were normal conversation just 20 years ago are now forbidden. Comedians can't reference their own childhoods without triggering outrage. Every joke is analyzed, dissected, and judged not by whether it's funny, but by whether it violates ever-changing progressive orthodoxy. Tim grew up inspired by comedy legends Richard Pryor, Lenny Bruce, George Carlin, comedians who pushed boundaries and weren't afraid to make audiences uncomfortable. These were artists who believed that nothing should be off-limits, that comedy's job was to challenge assumptions and speak uncomfortable truths wrapped in humor. You know, Tim, you and I both came up, started stand-up comedy in the 80s, an interviewer reminded him. Those were different times. Comedians could take risks. Audiences understood that comedy wasn't meant to be a safe space. It was meant to provoke, to challenge, to push limits. But now every word is scrutinized. Every joke is potential ammunition for activists looking to destroy careers. Comedians live in constant fear of saying something that will get them canceled, blacklisted, rendered unemployable. Every joke is picked apart, every word analyzed, Tim explained. For comedians like me, it's a nightmare. He even joked that he'd probably get canceled just for using words he heard growing up from his own parents. Not because those words were hateful or malicious, but simply because the acceptable vocabulary has shrunk to almost nothing under the weight of political correctness. But here's what makes Tim Allen different from most modern comedians. He refuses to be intimidated. I was going to say, my act has really been about family and growing up anyway, Tim continued, his voice carrying that characteristic blend of humor and defiance. But I do some stuff. The women in my life, whatever political party it was, they always hated the government. Who's going to pay for it? They always argued about that over vodka. That's classic Tim Allen, taking real observations from his actual life and finding the humor in them without worrying about whether it fits approved political narratives. He's not trying to please everyone. He's trying to be honest and funny, and if that offends people, so be it. The pressure to conform is enormous. Most comedians have folded under it, carefully sanitizing their material to avoid controversy. They've become boring, predictable, safe, everything comedy is not supposed to be. They make jokes that punch at approved targets, that reinforce progressive orthodoxy rather than challenging it, that get polite laughs from audiences trained to applaud ideas rather than genuine humor. Tim Allen has refused to become one of those comedians. And that refusal has made him one of the most important figures in modern entertainment. Behind the scenes, the campaign to destroy Tim Allen has been systematic and unrelenting. It's not just about individual controversies or viral moments. It's about a concerted effort by Hollywood's progressive establishment to make him unemployable, to ensure that his voice is silenced, to send a message to anyone else who might consider following his example. They've tried everything. They canceled his top-rated show. They replaced him as the voice of Buzz Lightyear in the Toy Story franchise, despite his iconic performance in the role. They've written hit pieces about him. They've organized social media campaigns. They've pressured networks and studios to cut ties with him. And every single attempt has failed. Why? Because Tim Allen has something that cancel culture cannot destroy: authenticity. He's not playing a character. He's not adopting political positions for career advancement. He's simply being himself, a comedian from Michigan who believes in traditional values, who questions authority, who thinks political correctness has gone too far, and who refuses to pretend otherwise. That authenticity resonates with millions of Americans who feel exactly the same way but lack Tim's platform to say so. Every time he pushes back against woke ideology, every time he makes a joke that triggers the thought police, every time he refuses to apologize for being himself, he's speaking for people who have been told their opinions are wrong, their values are outdated, and their voices don't matter. Tim has become a symbol of resistance not because he sought that role but because he refused to surrender. And in an entertainment industry where everyone is terrified of stepping out of line, that courage stands out like a beacon. The most remarkable aspect of Tim Allen's war with woke Hollywood is that he's winning. Against all odds, against the entire weight of the entertainment establishment, against relentless attacks and constant pressure, Tim Allen is still standing, still working, still speaking his mind. Last Man Standing didn't just survive cancellation, it thrived on Fox, running for several more successful seasons and proving that there's an enormous audience for content that reflects their values. The Santa Clauses became a hit on Disney+, despite the controversy, because families wanted to see Tim Allen as Santa Claus and didn't care about the woke mob's outrage. Every project Tim touches succeeds because he's connected with an audience that Hollywood refuses to acknowledge. Exists normal Americans who are tired of being lectured, tired of being told what to think, tired of entertainment that prioritizes political messaging over actual entertainment. But more importantly, Tim has proven that cancel culture only works if you let it. If you refuse to apologize, refuse to back down, refuse to change who you are to please people who hate you anyway, they can't touch you. Their power evaporates in the face of genuine conviction. It's gotten to the point where literally there's part of me, a deep part of me, that just says, "F it, bring it on," Tim said, articulating the attitude that has made him uncancelable. If you want to cancel me, go ahead. I mean, I can't, but that's not the point. The point is that he's not living in fear. He's not moderating his voice. He's not playing by their rules. And that terrifies Hollywood more than anything else. Because if more people follow Tim's example, if more celebrities refuse to be intimidated, if more Americans speak up without fear of being canceled, the whole system of control collapses. Tim Allen has shown that the emperor has no clothes. Cancel culture's power is entirely psychological. It works by making people believe they'll lose everything if they step out of line. But Tim stepped out of line repeatedly, and not only did he survive, he thrived. His career is flourishing, his audience is loyal, his voice is amplified, and every attack against him only makes him more popular with the millions of Americans who see themselves in his struggle. The thought police want control over every aspect of culture, every conversation, every joke, every opinion. Tim Allen has spent years demonstrating that they can't have it, that Americans are still free to think what they want, say what they believe, and laugh at what they find funny regardless of what progressive activists demand. This is a thought police thing, and I do not like it, Tim has said repeatedly. But when I use these words, this is my intent behind those words. Intent matters, context matters, freedom matters. And Tim Allen refuses to live in a world where comedians are imprisoned by ever-changing rules enforced by people who have appointed themselves as society's moral guardians. The battle continues. The woke mob hasn't given up their campaign to silence Tim Allen, and they likely never will. Every new project brings fresh attacks. Every joke spawns new outrage. Every public appearance generates think pieces about how problematic he is. But Tim keeps going. He keeps working. He keeps speaking. He keeps making people laugh while simultaneously making them think. And with every act of defiance, he proves that ordinary Americans don't have to surrender to ideological bullying. The entertainment industry thought they could make an example of Tim Allen. They thought that by canceling his show, attacking his character, and trying to destroy his career, they would discourage others from speaking out. They thought they could use him to demonstrate the cost of dissent. Instead, Tim Allen became a case study in how to beat cancel culture, how to survive the mob, how to thrive despite relentless opposition, how to turn attacks into opportunities, cancellation into resurrection, controversy into connection with audiences who are desperate for authentic voices. Fox picked up Last Man Standing when ABC canceled it. Disney brought him back for the Santa Clauses despite the controversy. His stand-up tours sell out. His social media posts generate millions of engagements. His audience remains fiercely loyal because they recognize something rare in modern entertainment. Complete authenticity. The hardest working man, someone called him, referencing his relentless touring schedule. 44 cities just finished. At an age when most comedians are coasting on past success, Tim Allen is working harder than ever, reaching more people than ever, having more impact than ever. Because he understands something fundamental. You can't cancel someone who refuses to be canceled. You can't silence someone who's willing to speak regardless of consequences. You can't destroy someone who's built their career on authenticity rather than approval. So what is Tim Allen's secret? How has he survived and thrived in an industry that wants him gone? The answer is simpler than it seems. He's just being himself. That's it. That's the magic. That's the secret that terrifies Hollywood and inspires millions. In an entertainment industry built on pretense, where everyone is performing even when they're not on camera, where political positions are adopted based on career calculations rather than genuine conviction, Tim Allen is simply being Tim Allen. He says what he thinks. He jokes about what he finds funny. He defends the values he actually holds, rather than the values he's supposed to hold. And audiences respond to that authenticity with fierce loyalty because it's so incredibly rare. They're tired of being lectured by celebrities who live in mansions while preaching about inequality. They're tired of being told they're bigots for holding mainstream opinions. They're tired of entertainment that prioritizes political messaging over actual entertainment. Tim Allen gives them something different, something real, something honest. And they reward him for it with their viewership, their ticket purchases, their unwavering support. The woke mob's only power over comedians and celebrities is the fact that most of them are terrified of being canceled. They self-censor. They apologize preemptively. They change their content to avoid controversy. They let fear control their creative choices. But if more comedians follow Tim Allen's example, if they just be themselves, speak honestly, and refuse to let activists dictate their art, the mob's power evaporates. Cancel culture only works if people participate in their own cancellation. Tim has spent years demonstrating that you don't have to play that game. Stand up. Speak out. Be yourself. Don't apologize for opinions you actually hold. Don't pretend to believe things you don't believe. Don't sacrifice your integrity to please people who will never be satisfied anyway. That's the Tim Allen playbook. And it works. The broader implications of Tim Allen's rebellion extend far beyond one comedian's career. He's become a symbol of resistance against the thought police, proof that ordinary Americans can stand up to ideological bullying and survive. Every time he refuses to apologize, every time he continues working despite the attacks, every time he demonstrates that cancel culture is ultimately powerless against authentic conviction, he gives courage to millions who feel silenced and afraid. Parents who disagree with progressive ideology in their kids' schools see Tim's defiance and find courage to speak up at school board meetings. Workers who disagree with diversity training in their companies see Tim's success and realize they don't have to pretend to agree. Ordinary citizens who are tired of being told what to think see Tim's example and remember that they still have freedom of speech and freedom of thought. This is why Hollywood hates Tim Allen so intensely. Not because he's conservative. There are other conservatives in entertainment who manage to coexist peacefully with the establishment. They hate him because he won't submit, because he demonstrates that their power is illusory, because his success proves that audiences want something different than what they're being offered. Every time Tim Allen books another job, every time his show gets renewed, every time his comedy tour sells out, it's evidence that Hollywood's gatekeepers don't control culture the way they think they do. That their ability to enforce ideological conformity is limited. That Americans are still free to choose what they watch and who they support. And that freedom terrifies them more than anything. Where does this story end? It doesn't. Tim Allen isn't retiring. He isn't backing down. He isn't compromising or moderating or becoming what Hollywood wants him to be. He's going to keep working, keep speaking, keep making people laugh, and keep driving the woke mob absolutely insane. The next project will bring fresh attacks. The next joke will generate new outrage. The next interview will provide more ammunition for activists who want him silenced. But none of it will matter because Tim has already proven that their attacks are meaningless against someone who simply refuses to care. He's living proof that you can survive cancel culture, that you can thrive despite Hollywood's disapproval, that authenticity and talent will ultimately triumph over ideology and intimidation. So what should other comedians learn from Tim Allen's example? What should ordinary Americans take away from his years-long battle with woke Hollywood? The lesson is clear. Stand firm. Don't apologize for being yourself. Don't surrender your values to please people who hate you. Don't let fear control your choices. Don't participate in your own cancellation. The mob is loud, but they're not powerful unless you give them power. They can tweet and write articles and organize campaigns, but they can't actually hurt you unless you let them. Tim Allen has demonstrated this truth over and over again, and his continued success is proof that the system of control the entertainment industry has built is ultimately fragile. One person standing firm can inspire millions. One voice refusing to be silenced can encourage countless others to speak up. One comedian keeping his integrity intact can demonstrate that the cost of resistance is far less than the cost of surrender. Tim Allen didn't set out to become a culture war figure. He just wanted to make people laugh while being himself. But when forced to choose between his authenticity and his career, between his values and Hollywood's approval, between speaking truth and accepting lies, he chose authenticity, values, and truth. And in making that choice, he became something more important than just another successful comedian. He became proof that ordinary Americans don't have to surrender to ideological bullying. That freedom of speech still means something. That courage still matters. That one person standing firm can make a difference. Hollywood tried to cancel Tim Allen. They tried to silence him, blacklist him, destroy his career. They threw everything at him: cancellation, replacement, constant attacks, relentless pressure. And they failed. Completely and utterly failed. Because Tim Allen just kept being Tim Allen. And that was enough. The war continues. The attacks haven't stopped. The woke mob still wants him gone. But every day that Tim Allen wakes up, goes to work, makes people laugh, and refuses to surrender, he wins. And Hollywood loses. That's the story. That's the rebellion. That's the blueprint for beating cancel culture. Just be yourself. And never, ever back down.